June the 1st. Welcome to June. Yay! It's apparently supposed to get a bit colder for us, but it's okay. It's all good. We're alive and well. Air in our lungs and belongs to the Lord. We are His. We rejoice in Him and we celebrate. We press into Him. We worship. We worship. We worship. We worship. So we're continuing to be introduced to Solomon here, and we begin to see all the blessings of the Lord that come into him. We see all the wealth that's coming in, all the horses that he has. We see his wisdom in the way that he imports and then exports horses. He buys them off of Egypt and then sells them to other people. And there's a lot going on. And yesterday we had noted that his first act was an act of disobedience. But it really is an indication that the law was not well known. And Solomon's supposed to have his own copy of the law. Right? He's supposed to have that written out. And he's supposed to be reviewing that every single day. And it seems like he's unaware, because his first act was marrying the princess of Egypt, and they were not permitted to intermarry with other nations at all. So, but we see how God blessed him, and then there's the accumulation of the wealth. That's an interesting thing, and the mention of the horses is a big thing as well. And then we know eventually what happens with Solomon with the many wives and what results in that. And I don't know, there seems to be an accumulation here of things that might really explain how Solomon ended up where he did. But there's under Moses, and a lot of people don't know this, and I'm going to let me just cancel this out. I'm going to review it here for you. Under Moses, there was a law given to the king. There were limits set on the king. And here, let me just get my glasses, saying, once you have entered the land, sorry, this is in Deuteronomy 17, once you have entered the land the Lord your God has given you, and you have taken possession of it, and settled down in it, you might say, let's appoint a king over us, as all our neighboring nations have done. You can indeed appoint over you a king that the Lord your God selects. A lot of people don't understand that God had allowed for a king. He knew that they were going to have this desire, and he allowed for it. He said, you can indeed appoint over you a king. You can appoint over you a king who is one of your fellow Israelites, so that you're not allowed to invite foreigners in. You are not allowed to appoint over you a foreigner who is not one of your fellow Israelites. That granted, the king must not, there you go, the king must not acquire, okay? The king must not acquire too many horses. Must not acquire too many horses. And he must not return the people to Egypt in order to acquire more horses. Now, Solomon is acquiring horses, and who's he acquiring the horses from? Egypt. Wow. Okay. Because the Lord told you, you will never go back by that road again. The king must not take numerous wives, so that his heart doesn't go astray. Nor can the king acquire too much silver and gold. Instead, when he sits on his royal throne, he himself must have a copy of this instruction on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priest, and he goes on with that. So, what's going on here? Well, part of it definitely, there's definitely parts where Solomon has entered into disobedience, and it's most likely ignorance of the law. Now, ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? We know that. But yet, we see a grace upon him that the Lord has given, and it's just an amazing thing. But could it also be that the seasons have changed? This was so that the king wouldn't be able to take credit for the protection of Israel himself. He represented God in this protection. The king was responsible for the protection of the country, He was also responsible for ensuring the prosperity. In other words, that he would work the trade routes and all that sort of stuff, and God would bless all of that, and prosperity would come in. But he was God's tool, his instrument, to bring these things about. So the king really, through the king, God was protecting, and through the king, God was providing. That's the way it was supposed to work. But he limited the king himself. The king was not allowed to acquire too much wealth. He was not allowed to acquire too large of an army, so that the king would become so powerful, and then they would come up with their own gods, and their dependence had to be on Yahweh. And so, is there a changing of the season here? No longer is Israel needing really to protect herself, because the enemies have all been put under David's feet, if you want to use that term. Solomon has entered into all these peace treaties. It's a time of peace. It's a time of prosperity. Is the king now to reflect that? The acquirement of the horses, the horse trade that is going on. Interesting that comes from Egypt, though. And these are just things I'm pondering here. The fact that he had such accumulated wealth, but it wasn't centered on him. The whole land, everybody was prospering. Everybody was prospering. And remember back where the Commonwealth, God said that there would be no poor, because those who had much would give to those who didn't, and so that there would be no poor in Israel. And the king was ensuring that there was prosperity in his kingdom, and he was a reflection of that. And the Queen of Sheba came in, and later, and then other officials came in to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and they reflected on the glory, and they gave credit to God, and God was worshipped and magnified because of all of this. There are seasons that we go through, and God positions us differently in different seasons. I really believe that. And that's what Paul said, that he's learned to be content in all seasons. He knew what it was to have plenty, and he knew what it was to be in want. He knew these things. He went through these seasons, but he knew what the contentment was. His contentment was the Lord. It was the relationship. He was centered on the Lord, and the seasons didn't bother him because he knew that it was for God's purposes, and positionings were taking place. But we have this thing where we lock into things, and we don't adjust. We're not fluid. The relationship is locked in. The relationship is locked in. Everything that comes with our relationship is locked in. But how God uses us is a fluid thing. We move through seasons, and we need to be open to that. I don't want to go on too long. I just want to plant that thought in your mind, because some of you are way overdue for changing seasons. You were supposed to change seasons a couple of seasons ago, and you've muscled through seasons that you shouldn't have had to muscle through at all. And God, it's a flow. It's a flow, and it's peace and it's joy. If you don't have peace and joy in the situation you are, then you need to check that relationship. You need to check where you are in that. I don't want to go too long with this. So you be blessed today. You be encouraged today. Check. Ask the Lord. Ask Him. Are you in the season? Have you adjusted? Have you been repositioned? Is He wanting to do things that you're resisting right now? And just let it flow. Let it flow, people. Let it flow. Let it come in. Let that joy and peace, and walk in that righteousness, and just enjoy Him. Enjoy Him today. Enjoy Him today, and His blessings will flow through you and infect everybody around you. God bless.